It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and joining us for, it's a long overdue revisit.
Yes.
For a little bit of catechesis, a little bit of how to minister to our young people is kind of your specialty.
I would say so.
Kathy Fech, how you been?
I've been great, Kyle. It is so good to be back in the studio and to be visiting you guys again.
Yeah. What have you prepared? You make it so easy for me because you do all the preparation. So what do you have for us today?
What Kyle is saying is I talk too much, and therefore he doesn't have to do anything.
It's my favorite kind of guest.
All right, fair. So one of the things that I was sharing with Kyle is something that is a problem both part real and part perceived in a lot of parishes, and that is the difference in how we treat our public school kids and our Catholic school kids who are in our parishes. All of our youth in our parishes are so important, and none of these things are anything that's done intentionally, but there's a lot of issues and tensions that can accidentally arise if we're not more attentive and more aware of the differences in when and how these students are on our campuses and what their needs are.
Would you also throw in homeschool?
Oh, absolutely. It would be very fair to throw in homeschool. So we do have, the average parish has, 3 categories of youth. And of course, some parishes have more homeschoolers than others and things like that. But we definitely want to include them in there as well. And depending, some of our homeschool families tend to be a little more similar to the Catholic school kids in that they might be more present at things like daily mass and things like that. But at the same time, some parents choose to use religious education. I've had a number of parents do this as a way of giving their kid one other social outlet in the parish and things like that, since they're not at the parish school. And so those kids almost are kind of a neat bridge where you see them in a number of capacities just because the flexibility of their schedule sometimes.
Yeah.
So what I have seen, and again, this is not to judge any parishes that I've belonged to or worked at, it just seems to happen that if you look overall at your parish's websites and bulletins and overall communication, as far as the youth, much more seems to be geared towards promoting and talking about your Catholic school students. And that's very understandable. That's for those that have a Catholic school on their campus, that's a huge presence. It is a huge source of youth involved in the parish. And also it's a source of need because the parish then needs to help subsidize that school and support the facilities and salaries and all these other things that come into running a Catholic school. So it's definitely understandable that this would happen. But unfortunately, what can happen is all of these wonderful other youth who might only be on campus for an hour or two a week for religious education classes tend to feel not as important. But I know the joke that we've made is, you'd come to school on a Thursday morning and, oh, I'm sorry, teacher, I don't have my homework. The CCD kids must have taken it. My pencils are all broken. Why? Those CCD kids must have gotten my desk. I hate to say it, but this really was the general attitude of Catholic school kids in the 80s. I'm sorry, because I now love my RE kids dearly, and I would never want anybody to say that about them. Anyway, more back on track. What's happened is these kids who are at school and are there maybe on your campus 5 days a week, minimum, because they're there for school, but then add in all of their after-school activities, be it plays, clubs, sporting events, and then hopefully also weekend mass attendance. Some of these kids are on campus 6-7 days a week. The deacons, the priests, the parish staff tend to know them, maybe not all by name, depending on the size of your school, but they know them by face, and sometimes know a little more about them, name and a little more about their interests and things like that, because they see them more regularly. Then we have all of these wonderful students, be they homeschoolers or RE kids, whatever it might be, who maybe come to campus just for weekend masses and then maybe religious ed classes. And so we just don't see them as much. Through no fault of their own, their parents have decided that public schooling or homeschooling is the right choice for their family. And we definitely want to love, honor, and support that decision. But at the same time, are these kids really feeling connected and a part of the parish? A lot of times they're not. And what I have seen is the typical trend, and again, I'm not judging anybody or any family or parish for certain attitudes and things, but what tends to happen is then when we build programs for our youth that are not tied to the school or to the religious ed program, be it summer programs like a vacation Bible school or Totus Tuus is what I do in my parish in Toledo now, things like retreats that you might offer, youth ministry, those types of events, we tend to fill up first with our Catholic school kids. And sometimes our public school kids tend to feel slighted. And these are things that I've heard over the years or experienced, because if I have a youth group at my parish, and let's say I'm at a smaller parish and I have about 25 youth that come on average. Well, if 23 of them are from the local Catholic school and 2 of them are from the public school, they tend to feel maybe a little on the outskirts, and it's maybe harder for them to integrate because they're not with these other 23 kids.
Sure. Inside jokes and all kinds of history and right.
Absolutely. All those shared things. And so my concern as a parish minister, and I think that really many parish staff members do have this concern as well, it's just a matter of how to address it, is how do we get these other kids more integrated and feeling more involved? One of the things I learned in Toledo is the case is that some of the CYO sports, I know like cross country is one of them that a parishioner specifically told me about, that the CYO cross country teams, as long as you're registered in a parish, you can join those teams.
Sure.
And so things like that, and again, I'm not going to know what they are at your specific parish or even in this diocese as much, but there might be great opportunities to bring everybody together.
Yeah.
Same thing. If your Catholic school is having trouble, for example, filling all the roles in the school play, let's say you've had 20 kids try out, but you've got a 30-role play.
Yeah.
Well, are you cutting roles? Or if this is all after school, are you reaching out to the other young people in your parish? Because maybe those practices and those events would fit those young people's schedule. Maybe they didn't make their school play at their massive public school, and maybe at the smaller Catholic school now they've got a chance. Again, I don't care what it is, whatever the activity is, be it a sporting event or hobbies or your youth ministry, but what are we doing to make it equally accessible to all the young people in our parish, and then to really encourage those ones who maybe aren't on campus as much, which tends to be definitely your religious ed kids and sometimes your homeschool families, to encourage them to be a little more involved and a little more integrated within your larger parish community.
Yeah.
You really are a parish family. And yes, the school is definitely like a separate entity to an extent because it's got its own, budgets and leadership and things like that. But at the same time, what can we be doing to get them that much more involved and connected? And I've had a number of ideas, some of which I've been able to work with, some of which I haven't had as much a chance with. But really, this has to start with, in my mind, 3 key staff members. And that is your pastor, your director of religious education or faith formation, whoever it is who runs your religious instruction for the public school students, and your principal. If the 3 of them are not in good, clear communication and equally passionate about all the young people in the parish, that's where these problems are going to start. Because even though you might have some of these tendencies and, like I said, these biases, if those 3 key people are doing what they can to communicate, to integrate, and to bring together and to try and resolve just even some of these tensions, you have a better chance at success as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned from a colleague was to get my catechists and school teachers of the same grade level all together for a couple purposes. One, you've got these professional educators who know a lot about dealing with a certain age and demographic, and often they're teaching from the same, if not identical, religion curriculum. Right. When you've got a volunteer catechist who's maybe only teaching, 75 minutes a week and also is most likely not a trained educator, they might have a lot to learn from this Catholic school teacher who teaches the same grade level. Sure. And also most likely they're sharing a space. More often than not, your second grade religious education class takes place in your second grade school classroom. And it's good to foster healthy communication. For example, you might have a bin or a cabinet of religious ed supplies that you need to keep in that space. So even just fostering communication between the teacher and the religious ed catechist. Okay, I need to keep these things in your classroom. Where is a good place to keep them? Then looking at seasonal things. Well, we like to put up an Advent wreath in the RE classroom. Well, no, the school classroom already has one. Feel free to use ours. Right. And sometimes there might be reasons why we can't share for whatever reason. That's understandable. One thing I did at one of the parishes where I worked, where we had a joint school and parish religious education program, was when we commissioned these catechists and teachers on Catechetical Sunday, there are certificates that you can print out from the USCCB. We put them with signs outside each classroom. So it wasn't just Mr. Hyman's Catholic school classroom. It was Mr. Hyman's Catholic school classroom and Miss Fech's religious education classroom. And so we had a joint ownership. And even though the teacher was in there far more hours a week, it hopefully, the goal was to help those catechists feel a little bit more ownership and respect, like, oh, this is my space too.
Right.
Even though I don't use it as much, the parish is also giving it to me as a tool to utilize while I'm here.
Right. I think that's thinking of the school not as a separate entity that you're renting out to the religious ed people, but realizing this is a resource for the church.
Exactly.
One of the purpose is for the Catholic school system. Another purpose is for religious education and whatever else you might have hosted at the school. This is all tools that the church is using.
Correct.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really have liked about Bishop Thomas in Toledo is that he has asked all directors of religious education to implement a sacramental prep program that brings together both our Catholic school students and our religious education students, as well as homeschool families. Regardless of whatever your schooling scenario looks like, there are mandatory topics for both First Communion and Confirmation. And what we do is we offer for first communicants, these mandatory sessions are joint between parent and child. And so we build those in. And again, that's all of our families together, regardless of what schooling aspect their children are in. And then in confirmation, those sessions are a little more in depth, a few more of them, but also involve the sponsor as well. And so doing things like that really can help create some new relationships and help people get to know each other. But a lot of it also is, how is the director of religious education going about them? For me, sometimes I like to do little random things like I don't want to say assigned seating, but maybe having your folders at set tables when you walk in, so that all of a sudden at a table I might have 2 school families and 3 religious ed families, and just hopefully then fostering just some natural dialogue and getting to know one another. Nothing terribly fancy, and if you switch tables, I'm not going to yell at you, but trying to do little things to get some of these families get to know one another.
Sure.
I think there's other things you can do to bring attention to the parish. One of those things that we're doing in my parish is having monthly children's masses that are mostly led by the RE students. So the students are doing many of the ministries. They are altar servers, lectors, greeters, ushers, gift bearers, and so on. This is my first year of doing this particular program, but over time, I would love to see it a little more integrated, where I also can get my Catholic school students involved as well, so that we have more of a balance, and it's really by the youth of our parish, regardless, again, of where their schooling is, and to lift up all of our youth to the parish as being important and valuable and having something to bring and share within our parish community.
Yeah.
If kids leave the Catholic school, is your DRE aware of those kids so that they can immediately reach out and say, how can we get them enrolled in religious education? And are we reaching out to religious education families and saying, hey, have you ever considered Catholic schooling? Especially now with various funding options available for students who want to attend Catholic schools with receiving things like vouchers and funding from the government. Are we making our religious education parents aware of that? Are they simply going to public school because that's where they feel stuck because of funding? Or are we letting them know what options might be available? Should they be interested in Catholic school, or should that be the right option for their child, for their family? So why aren't we doing joint open houses where parents can look and discern and see the school and ask all their questions, but at the same time, if a family is looking at leaving the school, can also then talk to the religious education parents and families and say, what is this program like? Is this going to work well? What public school are you sending your child to? What options are there for me there? Just to foster a healthy sense of, we want all of our young people educated in the environment that's best for them. And we certainly want all of our young people receiving religious instruction. And so helping foster that flow between religious education and Catholic schooling.
Well, Kathy, we're running out of time, and I see you still have some bullets on your list. Can we do like a speed round to just kind of crank through the last few tips that you might have?
What, Kyle, you're asking me to talk quickly? Absolutely. So I think one of the other things you can do is joint fundraisers. I've seen parishes use the SCRIP program and other fundraisers to maybe equally benefit school and religious ed, or benefit based on enrollment. And so if your school enrollment is double your RE program, they're going to get double the profits, or vice versa. So things like that. But really, I think the big thing is just bringing everyone together to build that culture and help parents who go to different schools get to know one another and feel a part of the parish. And again, looking to RE kids first when you have to recruit for events. a lot of times the Catholic school kids will show up. They're comfortable there. They know that space.
And they know the other kids.
They do. Yeah. And so I think with your youth ministry, with your summer programs, really focus on those RE kids, because if you build your focus around them, and of course your homeschool families as well, getting them in is great. Fill your slots with them first, because those Catholic school kids are going to come. But if we can get those students who are not on your campus as much, who are not in your Catholic school, feeling like they're just as important, if not more, it's going to foster a whole different sense of community within your parish.
Great tips and suggestions. Thank you so much, Kathy Fech, for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kyle. Always good to be here.